I'm Andy Linton. I'm the Policy SIG Chair. I've been the Policy SIG Chair for the last 2 years, and here at the meeting in Xi'an, I was the only person who was foolish enough to volunteer again, so I'm now Policy SIG Chair for another 2 years. We had our meeting today, which was a couple of the sessions. We covered a number of formal policy proposals, and we also covered a couple of other informational sessions and so on. So first up, we had Adam from the Secretariat, Adam Gosling, and Adam talked about one of the issues that's coming up with IP version 4 addresses now that they're very much restricted in their availability is some people want to lease them. So rather than have an address for ever, you would have it for some short period. So rather than buying a house, you would rent a house for a while or rent an apartment. And then there were some questions about that in there. You know, just like if you rent an apartment, you need to give it back in good order without having punched holes in the walls and so on. So people were interested in what it meant to give an address back in good order. So we had some discussion about that. We didn't actually make any formal policy proposal on that. It was really just saying, here's something that's coming up, and it's perhaps something that people want to think about. You know, how could they use addresses on a temporary basis? There were some questions in there on law enforcement. You know, if you have had this address for 3 months, and then somebody else gets it, and then somebody else gets it, and the bad person before you did something with it, will you get the blame? Or, you know? So we have this idea of the who is protocol. So we think that perhaps we need a who was protocol as well, which was who was the holder of this at a certain time. So there's those sorts of issues. And then we went on to the 3 formal proposals that we had. One of them was about perhaps, wasn't so much about address policy and on how we actually give out address space at APNIC or manage it and so on, was about how we reach our decision process. So we have the policy development process, which is well documented on the website. And we want to be in the position where that's not rigid, that it changes and evolves perhaps a little bit over time. So we'd had some discussion on it last session, last meeting at APNIC35, and this time we had a proposal to think about 3 of the activities we do there. Now, one of the things that sometimes happens is when it's difficult to decide whether consensus has been reached, the chair and co-chair, or will actually sit down and put their heads together and say, well, what do you think, and have a bit of a discussion. And there was a little bit of concern that some people felt we felt pressured to make a decision just like that. So we thought that we recognised that, and I think it was good for that community to have a think about that, that it might be appropriate at times for us to just say, we can't quite decide what happened here. We'd like to talk about it for 10 minutes, half an hour, and so on. So we had that part of the proposal. We had a second part which was to do with whether, when we've reached the decision in the open policy meeting, the next stage where we go to the members' meeting tomorrow morning and Friday, whether we should seek for their consensus as well. And again, we had some discussion about that, whether it was needed and necessary and so on. And then the third piece of the proposal was about, in the policy development process, we have a formal proposal on the list, we discuss it on the list, we come here to the meeting, we discuss it in the open policy meeting, and if we agree, we go to the member meeting, and then we put it out for a last call on the mailing list. So on the mailing list, currently that last call lasts for 8 weeks, and typically we find that after the first couple of weeks, there's very little comment. So we have come to the conclusion on that one that perhaps we have a minimum of 4 weeks, but a possibility of 8 weeks. And we leave then that to the chair to decide. So if there's a lot of discussion going on at the end of 4 weeks, we would be in the position to say, okay, well, we haven't quite got there. Let's keep going until the 8 weeks is up, or let's keep going to 6 weeks is up, or whatever. Yeah. So that we talked about those. The first 2 we decided we didn't need, and the third that changed to go for a minimum of 4, a maximum of 8, with the chair to make a call in there. We've reached consensus on that, and that will come out on go to the AMM tomorrow. Will probably come out on the mailing list, and after APNIC37, we'll probably be using, well, probably, I don't know. Let's see what happens. We'll be using that mechanism. Then we had some lunch, which was nice, and after lunch, we had 2 more proposals, which were about address policy. So the first one was, we're in the position that perhaps as early as next year, we might see some extra address space come from IANA to the region. And there'll probably be enough, well, we're more than confident, in fact, there'll be enough there to give each member, should they want it or need it, an extra /22 of address space. So another 1,024 addresses. And for some people that will be very significant, and for some people it'll be marginally useful and so on. And it will be for people to say, well, I need that, I would like that, I need it. And other people can say, no, don't need it, we're fine, thank you. So that may be useful to people. We've basically put the mechanism in place to see that happen, but it won't happen for some period yet. There's an external trigger that sets that off, and that will happen, we think, perhaps next year. Again, this still has to go to the AMM. So we agreed this policy. We reached consensus. We'll go to the AMM, we'll go to the mailing list, and if it all proceeds, then it'll go to the EC and they'll ratify it. So our normal process of the way we make policy. And then we had a short proposal, or a simple proposal. Currently, we can transfer address space between different people in the region and outside the region. Occasionally, people want to be able to transfer autonomous system numbers, AS numbers, and we've basically added a process to allow that to happen. It probably won't happen a lot, but it's consistent with that other approach. And again, we go through the normal policy process and to finalise that. But we reached consensus on that piece of the proposal as well. And then our last piece that we looked at was a question, which is sort of kind of interesting. The NIR-SIG have, they're not quite sure whether they're active or not active, and they wanted to make some changes to the SIG guidelines, which don't affect us directly, but the SIG guidelines, these would be provisions in the SIG guidelines which at some stage might affect the policy SIG. And I think our feeling was, well, it doesn't really affect us, and we don't really object to you getting those in there. It's not clear where that's going from where I sit, but we certainly weren't going to stand in their way to try and achieve what they wanted.